Welcome to the Startup Lantern as we cover episode 2 of our recaps from 2024. Join us as we get into some of the hottest topics from last year and we talk a little bit about what's coming in 2024. So, welcome back. We're excited for another episode of the Startup Lantern. I'm Jon Druce.
And I'm Druce McFarlane.
One of the hot topics we covered last year, and I think will probably be an ongoing topic because there's so many aspects of it, is the concept of the venture capitalist, which is almost synonymous with the concept of starting a company. It is just one of the terms that you realize you have to deal with. And I think the biggest question that constantly comes up is the question, are they really trustworthy? Are they someone that I need involved in my business?
I mean, it's almost a cliche at this point where you have a TV show like Shark Tank, and there's the old adage that VCs are sharks, but when they give you money, they're your sharks. The idea here is that the VCs they're out there for a very specific reason, and once they've actually invested in you, they have a really big stake in your success. So, they are, as long as you understand that that's the point of alignment of the two, of you with them, that they want your company to be successful, you want your company to be successful. Any other point of alignment may not necessarily be the case. So if your goal is not just to make the company successful, but for you to be, at the helm during the entire time period, you may not be aligned there. But as long as you understand, what your goals are, what their goals are, you're going to end up being in a good circumstance. And again, they're trustworthy from a standpoint of driving shareholder value, which is really what their main point of interest is. Beyond that, anything else from a standpoint of are they trustworthy? You really have to make sure that your goals are in alignment. If you have certain ideas for the company that don't necessarily drive back to shareholder value, you may need to make sure that you get all that clarified before you take their money, because once you've taken their money, they're going to have a say in whatever direction your company ends up going. I'm going to pivot to a little bit of a different topic here, and that is, one of the important things that you have when you do a startup, and what's going to make or break any startup, is the talent that you are able to attract. And who's actually running the companies, who's actually delivering things. So, Jon, I'm actually interested from your standpoint. How do you identify good talent?
Wow, finding good talent will forever be a challenge. We've seen some interesting things happen over the past year. The Great Resignation, which really wasn't a total resignation; it was just a mass transfer of talent around between companies. But how do you find the right talent for your startup? So there's a number of approaches. Usually we discourage you from recruiting from other people in the company you work for. That can often get you in trouble. However, if you've got a good idea, chances are you've got people you trust that you're already working with. And those are a great place to start. Check with the people you consider to be mentors, which is another episode we talked about this year was how to find and develop your mentorship. There's a lot of tools out there to help you find talent. But the truth is, in a startup organization, to come in and have that level of trust you need in the culture we talked about on last week's episode, is you really need to know these people. So it's better to try to recruit from the talent pool of friends and individuals that you know and work with. If you're starting something completely new, there's a lot of great tools on the internet. Our episode covers those. There are hiring tools. There's sources like LinkedIn. Gosh, if you're really, really desperate, you could probably find someone on Facebook Marketplace, but I don't encourage that. But lots of different ways. I think the best thing, though, is to spend the time back spinning that culture circle again, interviewing the people that you're going to work with and make sure that they are not only talented in the skills you need, but they match the culture that you're looking for in your organization as well. Those are probably the biggest things I would say out of our episode this year around hiring.
So avoid Craigslist, you're saying?
Oh, no. That's primo content. All right.
I always go to Fiverr myself for like my CFO.
Yeah, I think account temps usually is a great place for CFOs as well. No offense to account temps. No offense to. All right. Next, I want to jump into probably what was one of the most difficult topics for me. In the startups I've had before that I've been a part of, this was an area that I didn't actually have a chance to spend a lot of time in. There were, executives that were more focused on those aspects than I was, and that's the concept of stock structure. I would have to say, just in fairness here, Druce taught me a lot as we got into this episode, as we started doing some research for it on some of the challenges of stock. And so, Druce, I think share some of what you've shared with me.
Yeah, that's actually like, if considering this is a recap episode, if you really have interest in this, I strongly suggest going into some of the previous episodes where we cover this in depth. But one of the things that people actually find reasonably surprising is they think about, we're going to start up our company and we're going to have stock, and then when we get investors, we're going to be selling the stock to these investors, and that's typically not the way that things go. Typically, when you're out there dealing with the VC, you've got your company, and say your company, is worth $1 million, just round numbers, and you've got 1 million shares, and you want to go out and you want to get another $1 million worth of VC funding. You're not basically selling those shares to this other company. What you're doing is you're basically issuing new shares. You've established, if you're worth $1 million and you have 1 million shares, you're worth $1 a share. So if you're taking in another $1 million, what you're doing is you're issuing another 1 million shares and you're taking in that $1 million. Now, the interesting thing about that is that you're not selling those shares to the investors. You're giving them to the investors, and then you're taking a loan for $1 million. So really, the company was worth $1 million. Now you got $1 million worth of money. Now your company is worth $2 million because it's $1 million of value plus $1 million in the bank, and you've got 2 million outstanding shares. It's the share price hasn't increased. You're still $1 a share, but now you've got that. But when you turn around at the tail end of this, and say a year later, you sell the company for $3 million, say you end up selling it to somebody, the first thing that you do with that $3 million is you pay back the investor. So they've got $1 million in their pocket, so that's 1 million, and then the additional money that the additional money that goes out there gets split amongst the shareholders and their shareholders. So they get $1 million back because they've got that $1 million worth of shares, and you've only got 1 million. So in that time period between the time that you took that money in, from that investor to the point in time where you sold, you were worth $1 million, you got $1 million worth of investment, and then you sold for $3 million. From your standpoint, your price didn't increase. You still walked away with $1 million. So even though the company is now worth 3 times more than what it was when you first got your first round of funding, that's where some of this stuff ends up becoming interesting. The VCs definitely got a good deal out of it because they got their money back, plus they made the profit. And that's why when you end up taking money in some of these circumstances, you know that unless a company is in financial difficulties, there's going to have to be a big multiple, above whatever your last valuation was, to make it worthwhile to everybody that owns stock to actually go ahead and make that transaction. So it's interesting. It's not, it's never a circumstance. It's rarely a circumstance where you're selling your shares. You're usually issuing new shares, and those shares go to the VC. And the money that you get from the VC is more of a loan than it is them giving you money for anything. So that's what most people, when I talk to them and they start doing this, that's the biggest misunderstanding that they typically end up having. But there's a lot more to this, and obviously I'm really oversimplifying how the process ends up working and what it ends up looking like. And if you want more detail, as I said, go back to some of our previous episodes because it's more than we can really cover here. But this is stuff that they don't make all that obvious to you in business school. We'll just say that. On the last subject here, let's talk about mentorship. Jon, what makes a good mentor when you're going through doing a new startup?
So mentorship's important for someone starting, especially their first company. And again, we cover this at length in one of our episodes. What makes a great mentor? How to find a great mentor. But what really makes a mentor is someone who understands what you're trying to accomplish, not just the immediate aspects of what your product looks like, but what are your long term goals. And then secondly, it's really amazing if you can find someone who's been through it before, someone who started a company, because there are so many more challenges that you'll face every day. Small challenges that will build up over time. Having that mentor gives you someone to work with who's hopefully already been through that. In much case, like Druce and I have, that you can talk to, that you can bounce ideas off of. Someone optimally that you trust, because you're going to be sharing intimate details of your company and your working process with this person. We also have an episode talking about protecting your intellectual property. But in your mentor, you really want to find someone that you can truly communicate and collaborate with. And that's what it boils down to, having that person that can help you when you really need some true business advice around the startup organization. Well, that concludes our second recap of 2024, and we have had a fantastic year, Druce. I would say we've seen this show grow from some really fledgling ideas into some really deep advanced topics throughout the year. Late in the year, we had an opportunity to get together and do a few episodes in person, which was stellar. We've also had a number of episodes this year where we invited in some guests, some entrepreneurs who started their own company, and got to hear from what were some of their challenges and how did they overcome those. So I really been a fantastic year. Again, hope that you've had a chance to tune in to a number of these episodes through the year. If not, we encourage you to go back, look at those. And if you find this show to be beneficial in your own efforts, we encourage you to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. We're trying to build a community of entrepreneurs here, a community of folks who are sharing their ideas, their thoughts. And if you've got questions, drop them in the chat. We'd love to hear what challenges you're facing or what thoughts you've had about starting a company. These may become great ideas for future shows, because chances are, if you're having those thoughts, someone else is too. Our longer term goal is try to eliminate all the possible hurdles that prevent you from taking that first step and starting your company, because we want to see you successful as an entrepreneur. So thank you for joining the Startup Lantern. Thanks for attending this episode. We look forward to numerous more episodes and some great topics in 2024. I'm your host, Jon Duran.
And I'm Druce McFarland, and we'll see you next time on the Startup Lantern.